German two-case prepositions. In today's video, I will explain you when you have to use accusative and when you have to use dative case with the so-called two-case prepositions. And pay attention, I will explain you when you have to use accusative and dative as local preposition, but I will also show you which case you have to use if the two-case preposition is actually used as anything else, but not a local preposition, so you can't ask wo or wohin anymore. Hi, my name is Jan and I'm your German teacher here on EasyDeutsch, your YouTube channel for German grammar. Today's topic is two-case prepositions. You've probably heard of them already. Those are the prepositions that don't tell you for 100% this is dative, this is accusative. They like both. So they like the accusative and the dative. And depending on the use, you have to use a different case. Sometimes accusative, sometimes dative case. And with the help of my ebook, 137 German prepositions, I will show you now when and with which preposition you have to use which case. So let's switch into my ebook. So we're here now in my ebook 137 German prepositions. Today's topic is two-case prepositions. The prepositions that can use accusative or dative. Let's have a look first at the local use of those prepositions, because first part of this video will be the part that you've probably heard already. So which case do we use according to the question where or where to? That's just a short part of this video. I will show you later on also which case do you have to use if it's actually not local, so if it's according to the time or something else. I will show you this, but to make it complete here, the two-case prepositions with dative or accusative as local prepositions, it's quite easy. If we answer the question where, wo, we use dative case. So ich bin auf der Kiste. I am on the box, on top of the box. That's a position. We ask with where am I? Wo bin ich? Dative. But if we are talking about the movement from A to B, ich gehe auf die Kiste, I'm going onto the box, that's a movement from A to B, and then we use accusative case. It's exactly the same for the other two-case prepositions that are über, unter, vor, hinter, in, nebenan, and zwischen. In the moment, it's not a movement from A to B, we use dative. That's the simple rule. In the moment we move from A to B, it's accusative, because this movement always ends in the position. Auf der Kiste, so ich gehe auf die Kiste. But we have to use accusative if we actually describe the movement. This you should have heard already, should be pretty clear, but the more important question is probably which case do you have to use if it's actually not about the location. Here in my ebook you have a few more examples for local use, but we want to have a look now at the other uses and which case you have to use. So here we have an. Obviously as local preposition, the same like always, but if it's not local, we usually use dative case. Why usually? Well, you can see here the 1 and 2. That's linking to the extra explanation. The 2 simply means it's almost always like that, but in the C1, C2 vocabulary, you might find a few rarely used exceptions of this. 1 is more important here, because an is one of the bad prepositions that doesn't really want to fit in boxes, because an usually takes the dative unless we have denken an or glauben an. So to believe in or to think about, we'll use an plus accusative. And every verb plus an that is describing that somebody is receiving something. So, for example, schreiben an, verkaufen an is followed by accusative. So, if you give something to somebody, figuratively, it's using accusative. If not, it's dative. So whenever it is temporal, modal, or whatever, not local, and it's not glauben an, denken an order, or somebody is receiving something, then it is dative case. Trust me, the other prepositions are easier. Auf, for example, as local preposition, like always, but not local, so whatever else. Ich warte auf meine Freundin. So I'm waiting for my girlfriend. Here we use accusative. We have the to here again because the rarely used vocabulary you might find an exception, but right now as a beginner or even as a little bit more advanced intermediate student, you will have an extremely high chance to be correct if you use accusative. Hinter, behind, as local preposition, like always, but if it's not about the location, you always have to think about, is it figuratively speaking something static or something dynamic? And you can guess already, if it's static, you use dative. If it's dynamic, you use accusative. So, ich werde immer hinter dir stehen. This means I will always support you. So that is pretty much me telling you, I will not change my behavior. I will always support you. So that's the static thing. While dynamic, ich habe die Prüfung endlich hinter mich gebracht. So I finally finished the exam. So here we have a change from before to after the exam. And then we use accusative case. By the way, all my ebooks always have a translation sheet. So you don't have to watch my videos to get the translation of every single example. If you buy the ebooks, you will get every single example translated in a separate file. So you can always check it when you actually need it, because I think it's very important that you understand the examples in order to understand the explanation and the grammar that is behind it. Let's take a look at in. In as local preposition, like always. As temporal preposition, it's always dative case, so no exceptions for that. If we're talking about the time, it's dative. In einer Stunde bin ich bei dir. So in 1 hour, I will be at your place. This is always dative. But if it's not local and not temporal, then we have the same thing like before. If it's figuratively speaking static, it's dative. If it's dynamic, it's accusative. So, du bist als neuer Chef im Gespräch. So, they're talking about you as the new boss. Here, we're talking about, it's a little bit tricky here, to be honest, but it's the so-called Zustandspassiv, the status passive. So, this is something that is static because it's a status. And ich habe mich in dich verliebt, so I fell in love with you is obviously dynamic, from not being in love to being in love. So here it's sometimes a little bit tricky. In is beside an, one of the two prepositions that makes it a little bit more complicated. But if here it's static because we're describing a status, and here we're describing a change. From not being in love to being in love. Neben, also if it's not local, it's always dative. Neben einer 1 in Mathe hatte ich auch eine 1 in Sport. So beside A or 1 in maths, I also had a 1 or A in sports and physical exercise. So here, it's actually rare that you find neben as not about the location, but it exists, and if it's not about the location, it is dative case. While über is accusative case. In the moment, it's not about the location. So, ich habe über eine Stunde auf dich gewartet. So, I've been waiting for more than an hour for you. Here, it's temporal and it's accusative. So, not local, über, always accusative case. Unter is the opposite. If it's not local, it's dative. Ich leide noch immer unter meinen Depressionen. So I'm still suffering, word by word, under my depression. Here on the less used vocabulary, the not so common verbs, you will find exceptions to this, but as a beginner intermediate, go with the dative. That's 99% chance to be correct. For, use the dative as well. In the moment, we're not describing a location. Ich habe Angst vor dir, so I'm afraid of you. Zwischen is, again, figuratively static, dative, if it's dynamic, accusative. So kennst du den Unterschied zwischen einem Hotel und einem Motel? Do you know the difference between a hotel and a motel? Here it's static. That's, again, we're describing a fact. The fact should not change, so it's static. But der Schulanfang fällt immer zwischen den 1. und 20.8. August. So here, it's a little bit tricky. You could probably argue, well, it's always like that. Yeah, but fallen is definitely something dynamic, right? To fall is something dynamic. So that's why accusative case. There's obviously no 100% rule. You figured that already. Those are rules that usually work, but it's obviously, especially if static and dynamic, a little bit room for interpretation here. But it's not that you use this very, very often. So the more common ones are in and an. Those ones you will encounter quite often as not local preposition. The most important fact for you to know is always the use as local preposition, because that's how you will encounter it 90% of the cases. And for anything else, remember the ones that are always the same case. And if it's not one of those, always remember, is it more static or is it more dynamic? And then pick the case according to this. If you have any further question, please do not hesitate to ask them in the comment section below. I'm always trying to answer all of your questions. Also, if you learned a lot today, I hope I've earned your subscription. Don't forget to hit the notification bell for notifications. And if you want to support me, it's always a great support if you like and share my video with your friends and your fellow German students. And if you would like to support me even more, you can buy the ebook that you've just seen here in this video. There you will find all the 137 German prepositions. I explain every single one for you in detail, and you get all the overviews and lists that you need to understand German prepositions, that you know which case you have to use with which preposition. The link you will find in the video description below, and then I will see you again in one of my other videos, and until then, viel Spaß und Erfolg beim Deutschlernen.